Okay, we're going to go through the user experience with this application I've built called Diet Planner. It's a Rails application, and we're going to demonstrate how we've added jQuery, Ajax, and JSON data, making it somewhat of an API, um, and go through the user experience and some of the code behind it. So we'll open up Sublime here, and then go online, open the Rails server. And we're logged in now as demo so that we can see, let's just make sure, we're going to log in as a demo user. Make sure that we get the admin buttons here. So what happens is these links are normally pointing to Rails routes and views like normal. And as we float over them, you can see down below in this lower left-hand corner here the various URLs that it would go to if there was not jQuery involved. So meals would take you to the meals index, meal names, etc. We've got these links all set up to be hijacked by Ajax, and therefore we won't actually go there to these URLs when we click on them because of hijacking the links with Ajax. So here's an example of one that's going to go to the foods index, not hijacked. So literally the browser refreshes, the whole page refreshes, you go to the foods index, or for food groups, diets, what else is here, user account. That's all, typical Rails stuff. But if I was to go back home and now I want to see click on the users, or let's say go foods again, should be that same stuff, but now it's going to show you the same data but via Ajax, and it's available because of some editing we've done to the controller routes, the controllers in Rails, where we tell the controller, return back to me HTML data, or return back to me JSON data. So in this case, we want JSON data, and when you do, I'm going to render it in the document object model, the DOM, DOM, in specific places where I tell that data to land. And that's where this gray box is a list of foods and grains, and these are the groups that each of that foods belongs to. So that's what's displaying here, the food and its associated group, food group. If I were to go back here to foods, the normal route in Rails, and you see that we've refreshed the page, and actually the traditional route, we've gone there and got the new page, you see the same data. If I was to do this .json here, it'll show you the JSON data, same stuff, but in JSON format. So that's what's allowing me to display this data that I've intercepted with Ajax in this link here. And if we go to the console underneath it, we can actually we'll show the code here. So let's say we wanted to see what's going on with this foods link here, and why is it getting hijacked like that. So here's my Rails app. I'll go in here and we'll look at the views, and right now we're on the home page, so that's under a set of views in a static folder. I've got a different folder for each set of views, and in this home page there's a link. Actually, this is getting rendered by a universal admin nav layout that I have in the layout of the whole application. So all pages are rendering this if you're logged in as a admin. And so this is the link that we're talking about, where it says foods here. It's got an ID of foods index, and that's how Ajax is able to find it. And the way it's being found and intercepted is up here in the assets folder in JavaScripts, and in let's see, which one is that, index and show, I believe. Yep. In this particular JavaScript, we are capturing that link. Let me double click this so it stays. Go back and show the home page one more time, that layout. So we're capturing this food index link with an ID of foods index. And double click that so it stays. And when we watch that link we're watching that link to see that it's going to get clicked. And when it gets clicked, we do stuff. So somewhere in here, when we first open up this first function here, it's document ready. This is what tells jQuery that once the entire document's loaded, watch these functions for stuff to happen. And when somebody clicks on something, intercept it and do other things that we program instead of the traditional Rails stuff. So in this case, foods index is a function that we're watching. So let's go down and find that. Users show foods index. Here we go. So here is how jQuery finds that link of ID, which is that little hashtag ID foods index, and it's a span as well. It's probably not. It would probably work even if I didn't put span, but it just helps me remember where it is, what it is. So this right here is why this link here doesn't go to the normal foods path in Rails like you would expect. Instead, it goes, gets intercepted here. Then we do various things. Once we've intercepted that click, I clear the show area. I've got a spot on my page here where I want to display data that I've pulled back. So I've set up a function that clears that out before we put new stuff in there. And I'm referring to this clear index and show area several times so that sort of wipe the board clean because I want to put new stuff up and makes the user experience more predictable. Otherwise, the data that you append there would just stack up and become unmanageable. Both of these stop immediate propagation and prevent default, keep the button from firing more than once, and also keeps us from firing the traditional Rails stuff that's behind that button in the first place. So when in my application, when I go here to regular button foods and I get this, sorry, we'll move the console. When the regular Rails happens, you see the server spinning here, and we hit the foods button. Server spins, we move to a whole nother page called the foods index. And when we're at the home page and we hit this same link, but it's hijacked by a jQuery and Ajax, you'll see the server spin, but you won't see the page change. We'll basically stay on the same page, and data just shows up magically. That's what's so cool about this. I'm navigating all over the site with these buttons, and this, the server is spinning like mad, serving up data to me, but it's not refreshing the entire web page. So it moves a lot faster. The user experience is a lot more fluid, and it's just cool stuff. So we've got a bunch of buttons on this home page set up for this, and that's essentially what's happening with all of them. We're hijacking a link that would otherwise go to normal Rails stuff, at showing, we're either retrieving data or filling out a form and posting data. All the typical stuff is happening, but it's happening via jQuery. So we'll go through some of these other buttons as well. And some of these buttons are set up with custom routes to have specific things run in Rails to give me back certain things that I want. Let's say I want to have random JSON or generated quotes. I can hit this button here, and it will give me 5 new quotes using JSON data. Here's the same thing though, 5 new quotes, but give me back an HTML page. And this is a version of HTML page that you would see if you went to the quotes page without navigating, like with jQuery. Here's a form to build a new quote, so we can put in here, let's see. I was thinking I want Britney Spears 8. So each quote here is just a fun little thing. Has a celebrity, a verb, an adjective, a food, a diet, and a phrase. So you make up these things as you go along. Adjective, let's see. She ate a green tomato, and tomato might already be in the database, but if it's not, it'll get created. So let's say we want to have a tomato cookie, something that's not in there. Pick a diet. We'll call she's on the fishitarian diet. Let's just say, yeah, hit me, baby. There we go. Whatever. And I will create the quote, and up comes, here's that silly quote I just created. with all the different pieces, the celebrity, the verb, adjective, the food, and then there's a couple of fill-in words that kind of fill it in together to make it a sentence. So that's what's happening behind the scenes in Rails. But now, if we were to generate random quotes, sooner or later we're going to see a tomato cookie show up as one of the foods, and Britney Spears show up as one of the celebs, and hit me baby as one of the phrases. So let me hit that a couple times here. So there's one right there. That's happening because those data were saved to the database and are now in the mix as we create random quotes here. There's one right there. So Lady Gaga, blah blah blah. There's that phrase. Anyway, that's again all happening behind the scenes in Rails, but we're hitting the buttons with jQuery and Ajax to make it happen. So let's see. And here's another way. Rather than do a form like we just did, this form, and here's clear quotes. All these buttons clear out nice and pretty as you want. Here's one with a form where I can add celebrities. So let's say you just start typing people. Keep on forgetting, thinking of celebrities. All right, so there's 3 I just added. We'll add some foods. Let's say grapes, and that's in the fruits. And let's say there's 19 calories per grape. Create that food. Let's see what else we got. Cookies, and that's in the dessert, and that's in 200 calories, etc. And you can make up new diets too. So we can say we're going to be on the Hollywood diet, and we're going to be on the truck driver diet. We're going to be on the dog and cat diet, whatever that is. And then you can add up kind of phrases, where's the beef? And whatever. So now we've got a bunch of new elements that we've added to the mix here, and they show up again as you crank through these generating quotes. These are all getting saved. So even though we're seeing 5 of them at a time, they're all getting saved in the database. So if I hit this button here, export to CSV, it'll open Excel, and here's all the 71 quotes we just created in a nice Excel format. Okay, clear quotes completely clears out the database. So now there's no quotes in the database once I hit that button. All right, so we'll refresh the page. That's how these all work. These are just different ways to do things. And then we're going to go through some of the code behind it so you can see how this is happening. There's a couple other flavors down here. One is to, let's see. This builds a quote. This is just another way to build a quote by whoever's in the database. You can just select from these different elements: celebrity, verb, adjective, food, diet, phrase, and you'll see, there's the ones that we just created, and create a quote, and now we've got a new sentence here, and that's added to our quote list. This one uses it creates one random quote, and it creates a JavaScript object. It uses an object that we created, a JavaScript class called a celeb meal, and that was part of our requirements here to show making a JavaScript object. So let's go up and check that out. Oh, that's right. I had to, in order to get this thing to show up on Heroku, I had to write that script here, right into the layout here, which I wouldn't have normally done because it runs fine locally with this script in a normal JavaScript file like you would have here in this list of JavaScripts. But that didn't seem to work on Heroku, and I haven't yet figured out why Heroku doesn't want to talk to these particular JavaScript files. Oddly enough, it does talk to the rest of them, but it won't talk to this one and make this class thing work. So we have a JavaScript class here called celebrity meal, and its attributes are celeb, verb, adjective, food, diet, phrase, just like we had in our other quote generators. And so when you create a new instance of the class celebrity meal, you pass in these 6 things, and those 6 things become the attributes of the instance of celebrity meal. Then there's another method that we have written in here to the prototype of celebrity meal, so that anytime you create an instance of celebrity meal, you can call this custom quote method on it. And this is a nice way of creating self-contained code that you don't have to write over and over again in your JavaScript files. So when you make one, you pass in the 6 things, and then you can call whatever the name of it is. So if I were to say, variable lunch number 1 equals a instance of celebrity meal, and pass in these things, I can then say lunch number 1 dot custom quote, and we'll run this method, and all it does is return a kind of similar to our regular quotes, but different and specific. So this is the result of a custom quote that is a method that is on the prototype of the class celebrity meal, and that's what's running behind these buttons down here. So while on the so-and-so diet, he said, phrase. And the same thing up here. This one's using the same thing. I wanted to be able to create, this is using existing elements in the database to create an instance of celeb meal, and then calling the custom quote method on it to create the final phrase there. And this one just randomly creates one and does the same thing. That's the only difference here. But that was cool to create a little route in Rails. If I go to the routes file, you'll see this. We have random quotes. We also have one random quote. Build me one random quote, and it hits a model over here. Well, one random quote hits the quote controller. I'll just follow it through its path here just for fun. And so once we go to the URL, let me open this up and we'll show. We go here and we say one random quote. That's pointing us to this route that we're talking about. And here's the same thing, JSON data. Nice and pretty. And so when we go to that route, it hits this controller method, custom method we developed here. And it builds, basically uses the random quotes method, but only builds one of them. So I'm kind of jumping around here, but it's all kind of send me down a path. And when I get to the path in the controller, point me to a specific method, build me something, and return it back to me in one of these formats of JSON or HTML. That's essentially what's going on. But let's look at it. So in the models, the quote model, let's find build random quotes. That's what's really being used here. And that is a method that you can pass in a quantity, and if you don't pass in a quantity, you'll get 5, and that's what powers these other buttons over here. When we hit these buttons here, we're getting 5 at a time because it's hitting that method. In this case, we're passing it 1 because we only want one quote. And so in our quotes controller, we're passing it 1. And what comes back is an array of 1, so that's why I have to go give me the index 0 of what comes back. And that gives me back my first quote. Then I can say, I'm going to have a new variable called quote sentence, and that is that same quote, but we run the build quote method. So we look back over in the quote model, and build quote is where it builds a quote. Now that I look at that, I realize that that's not what's going on in our JSON here. What is that? Oh, I should change this. Let's just give it some text so we can really see what's different here. Using the custom quote method on the class celebrity meal. Okay, so that'll help us see what's what. I'll go back down here, refresh the page. And if we hit this one here, that should give us that, yeah, using the custom quote method on the class celebrity meal, blah, blah, blah. Now here's our quote. I don't know for sure that I did it this way. On this one, I might not have. So let's just see. We're going to use the drop down, pull different pieces in to create the elements of the quote. Yeah, so this one is just showing using existing objects to build a quote. It's not using the custom class, but this one is. So that's the difference. Okay, at least we've demonstrated the difference of it. Back to quote therapy. So what's going on here? Well, now that makes me wonder what happens when I go to that one random quote. If it's building me this quote, oh, I see what's going on. It's building this quote sentence, but in both cases, it's not being used in both cases. So in this first case, down right here, new drop-down quote, it is building a quote sentence and using it in the method. This one is firing the same stuff, but it's only calling back at quote. Yeah, right there, at quote. I must have created it that way for a reason so that I could, that way I can use it for both purposes. So that's kind of the life cycle of it. And let's see what else about the user experience here on this gone through what you can do. Oh, here's another one. The final one, another requirement of the exercise here is we want to be able to use these hijacked links to show data and have the browser not have to refresh the entire page. And then I also wanted to be able to show has many relationships. So here's list of users. And these are all links too. So I can click on one like that. And now I'm looking at this particular user's show page. And so there's all their data, their email, their weight, their diet, whatever they're doing. I also can see now the meals they're having, the foods they've eaten, and whatever logs they've posted. And so this is a nice demonstration of, go back to the index again, bring me back dynamic data and have it be linkable. So watch, you'll see we don't actually travel anywhere. We're still on the same page here. We'll go to a user. Now we're on a user's show page, and we're seeing the user has many meals, the user has many foods, the user has many logs. And so let's see what user I'm in. I'll go on the user account now and actually travel to my page that I'm on. And let me make a new log. So right now we only have, my first log note. Let's make a new one. Let's say showing the application for YouTube. Save log. New log's been created. So now we go back to users, and I'm in there as a demo user now. And so now we'll see down here we have 2 logs. Anything I do as a user gets captured this way. So that's a neat feature. We could also go through, and for each one of these indexes that we've pulled out, we could create, look at that little flash message is still hanging around. I should get rid of that. It'll go away if I refresh, but it's kind of interesting that it's still hanging around like that. For any of these indexes, we can go through and do that same thing. Make these elements of the index linkable and use jQuery to do it. So I should probably go through the, just to quickly show that. So in this index and show JavaScript here, again, it's document ready. Watch for buttons to be clicked. And then when they're clicked, do something, either get data or post data. Then I have this sort of utility function here that clears out the various spaces on the page for displaying data. And I call this clear index and show area in most of these functions because I want to clear the board so you can show data. So let's show the user's index. This is where we get the user's data. And I have set up URLs to do this. This is still legal, I hope. But I have in my routes set up routes to pull this API data. However, you can still get it from the regular routes that you would see. So if I go, let's go up here and just display the routes. And I wanted to do specific things with these, so that's why I created, special routes for it. But you could still go to the users or any of the indexes and get JSON data from them. So let's go show that. In our controller for, let's say, users. Let's go look at the users controller. And we find the index. Oh, I'm not using index on this. Let's see if there's another one cool with controller. Yeah, here's an example. So if you hit the quotes index, you can get back the data in HTML or in JSON or in CSV. That's where I get that CSV download. But I have found it also more convenient to just create these API routes. So I can put a specific route in front of a user and say, you want the API data for food, so you can come here. That's just another way to do it. So I can now navigate to one of these. Say API_users, and I'll get back. Well, that's what you get back if you don't ask for JSON. If you do this, you get the JSON data. Also, it's fun to play around with the serializers involved here. So this display of data with diets, meals, foods, logs, this doesn't happen by accident. It's there by virtue of active record relationships, which is cool, but it doesn't show up in your JSON data without you kind of telling it to. So I wanted to get back the names of the foods, and then the names of the meal, because I was getting back meal data, but I wasn't getting meal names. So I had to specifically say, bring me back the meal, because that's another table, meal name table of breakfast, lunch, and dinner, etc. are not in the meals data by itself. The meals data refers to a meal name ID, so that doesn't tell anybody anything, number one. So I had to set that up with serializers, and that's a kind of a neat control that you have over how this stuff works. In serializers here, most of them are pretty generic. But let's find one. Meal name serializer. You specify, you kind of repeat what the active record relationships are, so that the serializer knows that this particular thing, the meal name, belongs to many meals. And then in the meal serializer itself, because I can call meal name just out of the blue if I'm in the console, you can add that to the list of things that you get back in the serializer here. So if let me go to the console here, Rails C, and I go, let's see, A equals meal dot first. So there's an instance of a meal. And because of the relationships that are there for meal, so if I look at the meal model, belongs to a user, belongs to a meal name, belongs to a food, I can say A, which is my instance of meal, dot meal name ID, and I'll get back the number, the ID number, but I can also say A dot meal name, and I'll get the instance of meal name. And then I can say a meal name dot name and get the actual word. So that's what allows me to create JSON data that shows meal name kind of nested like that. So it's very organized. It's kind of satisfying to see that, you know, all this data is sort of organized the way you want it. And then because it's in JSON format, there's just so many cool things that can be done with it. So that's serializers, and that's the custom routes. What else about this? The only problem I'm having left, well, the JSON, the code in the JavaScript code, I'm sure is due for a refactor. I tend to write it quite verbose. I'm sure it's not as dry as it could be, and it's the low-level AJAX functions. It's not the higher-level stuff, but it works, and I understand what's going on with it, and I can fix and change pieces of it wherever I want. So that's a success. Only thing I don't see right now is this particular button. Oh, well, it would help if I start the server. It's not refreshing like I want. So I have to still fix that. So here we are at home. This bottom button here is fine, it works, but it's not refreshing like I expect it to, like the rest of them do. If I go in here and create new stuff, this all refreshes. These all refresh and behave like you expect. But this one, it'll do it once and then it won't refresh. But here's a funny thing. In the console, it will. So if I open up the tools here in Chrome, and go down to that button, and well, I guess it doesn't the first still, whatever it is, it's stuck. But now watch this. Oh, it's not doing it. Yesterday it was doing it. So although at least that's consistent that it's not refreshing, because yesterday as I hit this button, it would redo the quote. So that's something I have to try to solve, and I'm sure I will figure it out and come back and update this video. Oh, see there? Now that's odd. Why is that? See how the one quote is refreshing like we expect? The server's spinning. This is the behavior I want in normal view, and something about this doesn't let it look at that. When I expand the window, I really don't understand why that's happening. So, and apparently something to do with this particular view, it's refreshing. In normal view like this, it doesn't refresh. So I don't get why that's happening. There's no errors going on. I mean, it's loading the page. It's hitting the the one random quote, like you expect. So, nothing's perfect. Always something to improve, and that'll be my next effort to try to figure out. But otherwise, everything kind of works as expected. Also, one other thing, if I were to somehow break JavaScript, if I were to say, here in our JavaScript manifest, and I was to take out all of these files right here, these are the ones that make JavaScript do all the magic. So I'm going to copy them and delete them and save that. and go back to the application now, all of my buttons still work. So this is just to prove that I've hijacked real buttons that actually still do the normal Rails stuff. And no, no fake magic here. But now they literally navigate to different routes and to produce you back the data. So these are all the same buttons. Yeah, we didn't type anything in there. So creates a new celeb, creates a new food, creates a new diet, adds a new phrase, drop down quote, creates a new quote. But this one, I don't expect it to work because it's only it exists because of a JavaScript class object. So that's not going to run, shouldn't it? Let's see. Actually, that script, that's a specific script that's still in this application layout. So that should actually still run. I don't know why that is. And we have not. That script is still in place, so why wouldn't that still work? Let's see what happens when we go in the console here. Sort of laying there like a dead fish, huh? Not really doing anything. I wonder why. Just for fun, we're going to put our JavaScripts back in here. Refresh the page. There must be something I'm doing here that requires something that requires these files to make this thing work. I've got to investigate that. I would think that because I have my script written here in application layout, that I shouldn't care that the rest of those other files aren't there. I mean, because celebrity meal is completely defined here. So when I removed these JavaScript files, what happened? jQuery is still there. So if I remove these again, why wouldn't that run? It makes no sense to me. Well, I'll have to figure that one out. Because all I've done is disable these three other files which don't have anything to do with wait, what's this new celeb meal? Oh, I see why. Yeah, this is the function that's calling my celeb meal class. Well, it's a new celeb meal function, just a normal plain old JavaScript function. But it calls one random quote Ah, here we go. There it is right there. This is where we're calling that class to create the instance of celebrity meal. So if I kill this file, then that's why that button doesn't work. All is good. The world makes sense again. Okay, so we'll put these back, and that's basically it. That's our demo. This app is also up on Heroku, although there is a couple of issues on Heroku where it. Let me show the bookmarks. There's a couple of things that don't work on Heroku, and I don't know why. Let's see. This is all normal stuff. So, JavaScript's working happy, good to go. These are all working. And then we're going to start seeing that word asdiff show up in here. A drop-down quote. That's working. Oh, and that's working. What am I thinking? They're all working. Well, let's check one other thing. Users. Yep. Here's a particular user. It all works. I guess it's the, that's funny. I didn't think it was working before. For some reason, I didn't see the, yeah, but this is all good to go. It's all happening on Heroku. All right. Well, that's it basically for the demo. I appreciate your attention. Thanks very much.